Hey guys, what's up? It's Goose from the Wise Wealth Discord. Back at you with another Sunday watch list. I know it's been a while. I'm hoping that this will work this time. I tried to get one in last night, but it was kind of having difficulties. It looks like everything is working correctly. Hopefully, it uploads correctly as well. So, I just wanted to give you guys a little more in-depth analysis than just the simple QQQ chart I posted last night. I'm going to start with the S&P 500. It's the broad-based index for the U.S. stock market. As you can see, we've been on a tear. The 10% pullback came down right around support. Did break through. We did have a false breakout, and when it got to oversold and November started, I mean, it's just been flying since. Point of resistance is kind of where it's at. As you can see, this is the 1 hour chart, so it's a little bit shorter time frame, but you have one touch, two touch, three touch, four, five. So it's like it's touching six, seven, going on 8 to 10 touches at this level right here, 454, 455 area. So there's a decent amount of resistance. If this is breaking above, then you definitely can start to see it continue to go. My thesis right now is that we're due for a slight pullback in equities. I would say close to 2 to 5%. I think would be pretty healthy. We could maybe fill one of the gaps that we have, especially on the SPY. The QQQ has one as well. We'll see though. I mean, the RSI would think going sideways is starting to cool off a little bit. It's still pretty high up there in the 73 range. Volume is starting to die off, as you can see. Like we had pretty big spikes here, but now it's starting to wane. So when volume's starting to wane, I'm waiting for either consolidation and pullback, or possibly, a big jump up. But it looks like momentum's starting to slow down a little bit. We're definitely running into some resistance on both sides of equities, both sides, tech and SPY. I mean by that. So we have the Qs that right now in the short term time frame, it's been just sideways. It hasn't really quite broken out. As you can see in pre-market, we're at 388, but there's still some support wicks right here, right here, right here. So as long as we could hold this area in the mornings, that could be a pretty good support area. Just go long, but I'm waiting for it to break out. If it does come back, you see a clear rejection of 389. Possibly I might enter some shorts, but right now we're just sideways, and it's like typically you don't want to be entering trades going sideways. You want to wait for the trend to start up or down. But it's showing some resistance. You see one touch, two touch, three touch, four touch. There's some resistance there, but now they're starting to build the support because this was a range too, and it broke above, retested it right here, and then continue to keep going. And now they're finding support on the top of this. So if it does break down, you'd have to be careful. The 387 shorting cues. Excuse me. I just woke up a short moment ago. I wanted to get this video in. I tried to last night, but it wouldn't upload for whatever reason. But if it does end up breaking down and falling apart from these ranges, there's this gap below. 378.40 would be the complete fill. I'm honestly not too sure if we'll fall. That's about where I've been kind of predicting for our pullback, about 2 to 5%. This is for the Qs for big tech, so we'll see. That's kind of my target range. If we do have a pullback, I think that would be a good, healthy, you know, digestion from an 11% move from November 1st. It just kind of exploded. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. I'll get a little bit more in depth with certain stocks. We're going to Apple. So Apple, we're pretty much kind of in a sideways motion. There's nothing too crazy going on, and that's where I'm kind of waiting to see with some of the options I'm trying to pull. Is are we going to continue to make another leg up, or are we going to do our pullback and start to fill some of these gaps? Because there's a gap below on Apple that hasn't quite been filled since it opened up on that morning gap. It's still kind of consolidating. There's nothing crazy going on. It's resetting the RSI, but as you can see, that move from that falling wedge was pretty massive. Once it hit that bottom of the wedge, I mean, it hasn't stopped since. You got a W pattern right here. So now it's starting to just kind of digest the move, and sideways isn't bad in a bull market. It's just a time you don't really want to be buying options because your theta is just going to get destroyed. So options are more about timing. If you're in commons, I mean, it's still a good place to hold. You just be waiting to see if they break below some of these support levels that they're building. But I haven't really traded Apple in a long time. It's just not as liquid as some other stocks that you like to see. But next point of support would be about 182, 183, somewhere around there, this line. Because this is what it broke above, and that was a massive move when it did. Came and retested it. This is the 4 hour chart, by the way. Retested it. It hasn't stopped since. So if it does break out of this, I could see it coming back here for that pullback. About the 182 area would be next support. If it breaks above, then obviously you have all-time highs. 198, 200 would be my target for longs. Microsoft, you have a rising wedge occurring. That's a little tight. But you have a rising wedge. It shows that it's kind of slowing down. Um, as you can see, like a, a sign of a strong movements are how big the candles are. It's like when you first start with this breakout, you have this big candle, you have that, you have these, you have this, and they're creating higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows. And now it's kind of starting to weaken a little bit. So it's like it didn't quite get to the high. I guess no, it didn't quite get to the higher high. Did create a higher low, and then we actually did break above, create a higher high. So we'll wait to see, but it just seems like it's weakening a little bit when you have the rising wedge where it's starting to get a lot tighter and it's not as straight up. We're kind of in thin air with we're at all-time highs right now with Microsoft. As you can see, they had a point of resistance here. Once it was broken above, you have a nice W pattern right here, double bottom, boom, breaks above. Not quite much of a retest, maybe in the middle of the day if you check the 15-minute, but it did break above. And once it did that, it just hasn't really stopped. And Microsoft's pretty extended here. I know above most of their moving averages, they're at least like 3% or something like that. So if this wedge does break out, I could see them trying to find support around this last consolidation that they had, maybe somewhere around here as well. 368 area, 360. Like I said, I'm not calling for a crash. I do think there should be some healthy take profits, though. And a lot of these major stocks are in rising wedges or seeing double tops or at a major point of resistance. So it's just something to watch out for. I'm not saying that it's guaranteed that it's going to be denied and come down, but you need to wait for the break in the upside as well. Nvidia, they're kind of there as well, where it's close to like a double top. It's not perfection, but you bring it down a little bit. One, two, like there's a couple touches, and you have this big rejection the last time they had earnings. So I'm just waiting to see. They still have a support here. You got one touch, two touch, three touch, four touch, five touch. And it's like I'm waiting to see what it does around the 479, 480 area. If it continues to sell off through there, then it's possible that we could start to get a decent little range going. I'm not saying or guaranteeing anything, but around 410 would be the bottom end of the range that I'm starting to plot out in NVIDIA. Because you could raise this a little bit, make it like just a massive range, because it was in a nice little uptrend, and now it's starting to not make higher highs. I think technically this was a higher high, so we'll see if it can maintain that higher low. The RSI isn't too bad because they've been kind of selling off since earnings. So I haven't really traded Nvidia much. I know I did get towards the when they started building this head and shoulders pattern. I was up here shorting it. That was pretty nice. Then I bought some longs on the way up. I mean, the rally was quite insane. I know it's been like 2 weeks since I've traded, but it was towards the start of November when it started. And I held for like 3, 4 days. And it was just kept gapping up and gapping up. It was pretty incredible, actually. You have Meta. Um, you had a decent amount of support turned into resistance turned into support here. The V shape was nice. It broke out of that previous high, and now it seems like it could be coming back down to try and retest it. It did retest it here. You have a higher high, higher low, higher high. Currently a higher low. So you can't beat the trend. You don't want to try and go against the trend. And right now, a lot of stocks are in uptrends. I'm just waiting to see if the RSI start to cool down a little bit. If the pullback happens, that's kind of where I'm at. There's a lot of consolidation. There's not really too much that I'm seeing from Meta. The 1 hour, I guess you have a slight head and shoulders, as you can see. I think you could make a head and shoulders now. Is that a thing? I think it's in this. Here it is. It's very, very like slight, but you could see it a little bit. Just a 1 hour head and shoulder. Go up there. Oh no, I deleted it. So you have the left shoulder. You have the head. You have the right shoulder. Boom. So what you would be looking for, I know this is kind of messy because it's not huge, but you'd be looking for this base to break. This neckline is what they call it. And it's like that is kind of where the support is, so that's meta for you. It's a 1 hour chart, so it's not going to be a huge move in either direction, but the measured move is usually how big the head is to the neckline. So you would go from the top to here. So if this does break below, it would be about a 2% move below. Let me measure that. 2.15. The measured move would be about 327 area. And as you can see, that's kind of right where meta needs to be. It's kind of right where you want to start building support is that previous resistance that they had. 1 touch, 2 touch, 3 touch. Broke it, retested it again, gone. So it's like now it's starting to try and build support above where previous resistance was, and that's a bona fide uptrend, making higher highs and higher lows, continuing to build on it. They're really not too far from all-time highs. A lot of these stocks, as you can see, aren't too far. Only one is Tesla, but I'll get into that a little bit later. Actually, that's next up on the chart, but 14%, it sounds like a lot, but that is crazy. And you see how this market can move. I mean, there's very volatile movements. There's certain things with the QQQ and the SPY and stuff, the things that I'm waiting for this week. I have PCE, and then we have GDP. It is a revision, though. I know I posted it like it was just um, a normal print, but I think a revision is just something of an old number, and then they revise it to see where it's at. So some of the things that could break it are those two things. Jerome Powell is speaking Friday as well. So there's just things you have to watch out for. Next stock I'm looking at is Tesla. They've currently been in a downtrend. This is the weekly chart. I'll get into a little bit. But as you can see, I mean, that's a pretty mean downtrend. There hasn't been much upside to it. Um, the one reason I do think it is, because I was just speaking about how other stocks are at all-time highs, is because Tesla is a car company, and typically, like the word around Wall Street is that we're probably going to go into a recession. And with that being said, car companies typically don't do too well, especially high ticket items. Um, with everything else, people don't usually buy high ticket items, and car companies especially struggle during a recession. So I feel like people are taking into account that Tesla sells cars, and that a recession could come, and that's kind of the reflection of their price action. Because like something like Meta, for example, is continuing to climb up even with fears of a recession because it's user based. People aren't buying a lot of things like high ticket items from Meta. They're just simply going on Facebook or Instagram and their ad revenue. People are always going to have a business that they want to promote. So it's like it's very like recession proof when it comes to big tech. But Tesla is kind of considered big tech, but they're not quite moved into like the whole the wholesale of their batteries and stuff. They're making good money off of it, but majority of their sales are from car deliveries. And now that people are buying less cars, I feel like that's the reason for this long downtrend that we've been at. But with that being said, we are coiling up for a big move. We're right in the middle of the range, but if it does break out of this, that could give it the momentum to finally continue to keep going up. If it breaks below, then we could fill this gap, hopefully find support there. If not, then maybe we are creating a, because this was a lower high, lower low. It broke below this previous low, lower high right now, and then if it breaks below this, you can go create another lower low. So it's like we're in a bona fide downtrend right now in Tesla. So I'm just waiting to see if it can get up here and get denied, or if it can break through. I haven't really played it. Like I said, I've been out of the market for the last couple of weeks, but it's looking like it's coiling up to do something big. There's something going on with Tesla. Whenever it has these days where it just consolidates, usually the break is pretty big. It's kind of filled that gap. I seen Jimmy, he had posted in the chat, I think last week it was, where he was mentioning Tesla stock and showing that the gap fill was possible. They had a nice little base that they were forming, and it finally did get right into the gap. So we'll have to wait and see. We have Amazon. They're in a bona fide uptrend. Only point of resistance is where they're at now, because this big purple box is consolidation. So you have a bunch of touches, one, two, three, four, five, six, and it's like this was a huge point of support for Amazon. Once they lost it, it became resistance, as you can see with this blue arc. So now we're here again. We're here again. It just keeps coming right back up. It's around the 150 area that the bears aren't trying to let get in. The bulls are trying to breach. We're a little bit on the extended side for Amazon, and as you can see, we do have a decent uptrend, so it is possible that it is rejected and it comes back down. Like I said, I'm leaning more towards the pullback scenario, so that's kind of why I'm showing you levels below to be careful for if it does start to get denied. So it looks like we're kind of starting to get top heavy, and oh, excuse me, I'm supposed to be waking up for work right now. Looks like we're starting to get a little top heavy and slowing down momentum as volume wanes, and we're starting to reach certain resistance points that were once support in some of these stocks. And that's kind of my thesis, is that maybe we could get that little digestion, that little sell off, and then continue up and try and breach some of those areas again. Riot, I know we've been watching that quite a bit with Bitcoin kind of going crazy. You can kind of see a little base happening. You got this touch. Then we're starting to create higher highs, higher lows, higher highs. Then it kind of got crushed again because Bitcoin is so volatile. I think one of the stocks that we were looking at more was Coin, though, because it has a direct correlation just like Riot does, but Riot isn't really a great company. Coinbase actually has some decent earnings beats, but they finally broke out of their base here. We're looking at the 4 hour. There is a decent amount of resistance here, as you can see. So like that's a pretty big break in the upside when it comes to a long like consolidation, because the longer it consolidates, the bigger the break. The longer the sideways action or the channel, whatever it has, the falling wedge, the break is usually a bigger move. So with that happening, hopefully a pullback happens, but it's been gone. I know like 2 3 weeks ago, Jimmy and I were in the 70s, 75 area talking about it could potentially hit 100. Now it's at 120. So it's like, just be careful. The stock could continue to keep ripping. I don't think it's a time to be shorting Coinbase at all. It's how low they've been. Bitcoin seasonality is around November, December, and they have been in a major bearish cycle. So it's like eventually the bullish cycle will happen, and they've had quite a bit of their chart does look good. So I would stay away from shorts on coin. I know it looks tempting because you see how much it drops since the top, but Bitcoin's starting to ramp up, and their chart looks pretty solid with this break in the base. So be careful with that. What other ones do I want to get in? I haven't looked at Netflix in a while. That's another one. It's kind of like how Amazon, they had up above a bunch of consolidation near their all-time highs. Now they're starting to work their way back, and it's like this is a point of resistance. This is a point of resistance, and it's like if it does get denied, hopefully it finds support around this because you have one touch, two touch, three, four. So maybe it comes back down about the 450 area, but it's been on a tear since that last earnings that they've had. They haven't really. I mean, that's pretty much straight up. And when that happens, the RSI is oversold. You have volume starting to wane. Those are typically signs that the momentum is starting to slow up a little bit. So we'll just have to wait and see. Shop. Jimmy was posting about this. I would like to see it above these levels right here, where there's a bunch of wicks. It looks like it actually is kind of breaking above a little bit. We had this point of resistance, 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 resistance. It's not quite making it. Now it's starting to inch above. Jimmy said there is great retail numbers, and they actually had decent earnings too. So we'll have to wait and see. Shop definitely could continue to move though. You got a nice base here. It breaks out of the support, continues to create higher highs, then maybe a higher low. We'll have to wait and see, but I don't really know what my price target would be. I guess just looking at it, about 90, maybe $100 at most, because you have this point of resistance here before you start to see it pull back. But I'm never a huge fan. Excuse me. I'm never a huge fan of RSIs being this overbought, the 77, 80 range. I feel like that's a little extended. You can see how straight up it is, so I'm being careful on calls right now, but there are certain levels that I'm looking at. You have Alibaba, my fucking baby that I'm holding on to. It's starting to break down. It doesn't look the greatest because we have this big old consolidation, and now that it's breaking below, you have the biggest volume stick we've seen in years. I do think that's kind of a sign of capitulation when you see a huge volume thing that's breaking below some certain supports that were held for years. So hopefully we could start to get some momentum going or catch a bid of any sort. China's just in a really bad spot economically, so investors don't really see much hope and reason to put their money in there yet. So they might even be a couple of years before we see Baba actually take off again. But we'll see. As you can see, Hang Seng had a crazy V-shaped rally. That was an insane move. You have Baba at 58, turns into 120, literally like a month, 2 months, something like that. I'm not saying that'll happen again, but bear market rallies are pretty fierce. And China's been in a bear market for a while. I know the U.S. technically is in a new bull market, but it's debatable. AMD, they kind of have the same thing that Mike is it Microsoft? Yeah, Microsoft has. And the rising wedge is like they broke above. They had a beautiful W-shaped pattern, double bottom, broke above resistance at the 104, 105. Now it's there, and I'm gonna go to the shorter time frame, the 15 or the 4 hour. But the 15-minute chart, it's just straight sideways, and it's like if it is broken below, it's going to be right around where this rising wedge is, so you could start to see it break down. Next point of support would be 116, 115. If it does break above this, you're going to start to see it the upper channel around 125, somewhere around there, 127 of the higher end. Their RSI really doesn't look too bad. Microsoft's was a lot worse. They're still pretty little far off. All-time high is about 132.83. It looks like. So it's got a little bit of room to move if it wants to try and test the all-time highs. A lot of the stocks that we're looking at are near them, so we'll have to wait and see. That was just a quick update, guys. I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead. I'll be in the chat calling anything out that is broken below or above, especially the Qs. We're in pre-market right now. As you can see, we are below this point of support that I had. I'm not going to get too trigger happy until maybe I see in the morning a gap fill or they go and try and test that and then deny it. Maybe I'll get in my shorts, but right now I'm kind of predicting about a 2 to 5% pullback, and it's not guaranteed. We could continue to go higher. GDP, Jerome Powell, and PC this week